Hello and welcome to episode 27 of On the 50. Today I have a very special guest, Key Poulan. Key is a very well-known brass arranger and composer in the marching arts. He works with a lot of groups. Currently, he works with the Sacramento Mandarins, Ayala High School. He works with me at the Connecticut Hurricanes. He writes for Fusion Drum Corps. He writes for Genesis and just a ton of programs across the country and internationally. Key has in the past worked with the Cavaliers Drum and Bugle Corps, Santa Clara Vanguard, and just a ton of programs. He's also a DCI judge for 12 years, which I just learned during this podcast. So he just has a ton of experience kind of in various parts of the field, and I think it really shows when it comes to his work. He thinks holistically. He's not just worried about the brass book. He's worried about the program, the visual side of things, the pacing, the soundscape. He just has his mind in all these directions. He's also just an incredibly nice guy and just very easy to work with. He communicates professionally. He gets his stuff done on time. He's just a gem. He's just a really, really special guy. I talked to him about his creative process, his workflow, how he got to where he is today. We talked about kind of the state of DCI and the marching arts right now. So we cover kind of a range of topics, and it's just super insightful. I think this podcast is going to be useful for anyone who's interested in getting into designing and want to understand how to kind of stay motivated, stay interested, stay inspired, how to have a workflow. He is someone that has proved over the course of his career that it is possible to be a successful freelance designer and get things done just kind of with an organizational mind. So I hope you enjoy it. I certainly did. Having written 24 shows in a year, writing 16 on average, how do you get your stuff done on time? How do you stay organized? What does a work day look like for you? Because this, you're a freelance composer, but this is your full-time job.
Right.
If you were telling someone who wanted to get into freelance design, like you have successfully, what does that look like for you? I think this is an important topic.
Right. Well, the first thing that I would say is be careful what you wish for. My last few years at Buchanan High School were the best years. I had the group trained. We had a fundamentals program that I developed that we started, early on. And, like in the 7th grade, they were already chiseling away at all of those kind of fundamentals. So by the time they were in 9th grade, they understood the language, they understood the expectation, all of that stuff worked really, really well. But when you leave something that has security in it, like healthcare is huge right now with this pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Quite honestly, my healthcare bill for a family of 4 is more than our mortgage. And so that was a big decision that I had to make. Yeah, I know. It's crazy.
Wow.
And,
oh man.
And I live in California. So imagine that.
Yeah. The mortgage is no joke already.
Right. So be careful what you wish for, because you never know. And this is a classic example where we're like having to rethink things right now. Like, okay, well, how am I going to bring in money to keep, to maintain all these different things? So I'd say, be very careful and know what you need to do. When I wrote 24 shows that year, I just stopped teaching. So that opened up my schedule to be able to do what I need to do, as opposed to I was doing, I want to say maybe I did 18 to 20 shows one year while I was still teaching. Mm-hmm. And I was wondering why I was feeling burned out. And I actually, for 2 years, I kept track of every hour that I spent out of the classroom for my band program. Now, I created the monster. Let's be clear and fair about that. It was all my doing. But when you have multiple ensembles, and you have indoor drumline and winter guard and all the concert bands and all the jazz bands and the marching band, you have all of these things. We were heavily involved in the orchestra as well at the school. Then you start to add up all those after school hours and all those extra rehearsals. And I was doing 80-hour work weeks when I did the math. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, and people think, wow, you just go to school. Your classes essentially run 8 to 3 o'clock. Oh, wow. And you get a lunch in the middle of that, you know. And what's really interesting is like, yeah, that's not even half the job right there. The in school stuff, it just keeps going. And I did keep track of that. So, I was doing that and writing, and let's say I think around 18 shows while I was doing that particular thing. So you can imagine what the life is like. And it is so much work that you just need to know that going in. Um, I It's a hobby for me too. Writing is a hobby. And so I was doing all the teaching, and then the writing was on the side, and I just really enjoyed that. And there's a financial upside to that. But how I put all that together, I would essentially write in every sliver of a moment that there was. Um, what I've done now, that it'd be interesting for me to say, yeah, I am so organized that I have this is when I wake up, and this is when I write, and this is when I eat, and all that. Um, the creative process kind of doesn't work with that kind of a schedule. And
Right.
I got some really good advice from a business coach. I wanted to help kind of organize all of the chaos in my life, and so I started working with a business coach, and he brought a lot of stuff into focus. And the really good advice that he had was, he said, when you set out to like lay out a task, we would meet once a week. He goes, whatever you write down and say you're going to accomplish this week, I want you to make a promise that that's what you're going to accomplish. I'm not telling you how much to do. I'm not telling you when to do it. You just got to make sure that you follow through on those promises. And then each week I would come back, and I would either say, yeah, I nailed all this stuff. And he would sit there. It was always fun. All right, I'm going to applaud you for that. And there were times it was like, yeah, I had this curveball hit me from the side. I had no idea. I had no wiggle room in my schedule. So I overpromised and underdelivered. And I am and the constant work with him was to always underpromise and overdeliver. And
Right.
so, and I think I kind of demonstrated that with hurricanes, just always being able to hit those deadlines, even if it was a close call, but still trying to hit those. And sometimes it was way early. Um, I think the best success you can have is to, first of all, know what your pace is, how quickly you're able to write. I couldn't tell you like how long it takes me to write a show right now, but I do know that I need to have quite a few days to be able to get something done and do it at my level of satisfaction.
Yeah.
Um, so so what does my day look like? I Well, with the pre-pandemic or during the pandemic, those are two
Let's
different
do
answers.
let's
Okay.
do
Yeah.
pre-pandemic, like normal season, you have mandarins, you have fall season, you have whatever you're doing for indoor. Let's pretend it's kind of business as usual.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, I would get up in the morning. I find that late night creativity is always the best. You don't have interruptions. You don't have Amazon ringing the doorbell and upsetting the dog, which is what happens on a daily basis. It seems like. Um, so I'm not an early riser at all, but once I get up, I usually come into the office before I even eat or anything like that, and just kind of I'll check email. And you have to be careful even with that, because that'll take you down a rabbit hole. Because I like to respond to my email right then and there while it's fresh, or I may
Yes.
forget about it.
Yep.
But to have that plan, like today, I know that I am working on the final push of Iola High School's show. That's what I'm going to get done today for sure. Do that. Now I have another project where I'm redoing my Firebird show, and compressing that down into like a 6 minute, 6.5 minute show, and making the cuts and doing all that, and rewriting some things in that. That is the one that's on deck. And if I'm quick and I get through Ayala's, I know that I can get to that, and that will allow me to get ahead because that's tomorrow's project. And sometimes and you know this too. One of the crazy things that we have to deal with these days is a lot of people like conference calls, and a lot of people like weekly conference calls. And when you have that, that's time that you can't be productive. So you've got to schedule all of those moments in your workday and know that, boom, I've got that. It's a double-edged sword for me because I'm going, well, I'm not able to write, but guess what? I better have something fresh before that conference call happens. If there's something on my plate that I have to do for that group.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so that will help keep you on task. And so I was very, very fortunate to be invited to go to North Hollywood High School to a PTA meeting. And the PTA president of that was John Williams' daughter, because her daughter, John Williams' granddaughter, went to the high school. And so every month they would have a guest speaker. So John Williams was the guest speaker in a very small library. This was a kind of a small school, and small library. There were maybe 25 of us at the PTA meeting, and he had a huge screen at the end. And I got to see his process, and kind of going back, I'm going to tie all this together, by the way. And going back, that was in 2006, and I was already doing this, but when I heard John Williams talk about how he put things together, it really, I had a whole new appreciation for him. I liked his music anyway. I mean, Star Wars is what brought me in. In 1977, I was transcribing the first trombone part so I could play along with the soundtrack.
That's awesome.
And so he kind of motivated me with his music to really fall in love with just film score. And so I watched his process, and of course he starts with the movie. And he pulled out this ledger. He said, okay, yeah, this is Raiders of the Lost Ark 3. It was the one where he's kind of a younger person, and there's the train with the zoo on it, and in 4 minutes, there were 74 cues that Steven Spielberg wanted to have. And he goes, yeah, here's the legal pad of Steven Spielberg's notes. Now I'm going to play this movie. And you're going to hear all the dialogue. You're going to hear all the sound effects. There will be zero music. And I'm going to read the cues, like everything that he wanted to have happen. So every time there was any kind of action on the screen, he wanted to make sure that was reinforced by a musical cue. And 74 of those during the first time. And I'm sitting there going, okay, this is a lot. Talking about, we're worried about like 4 movements maybe in what the general mood is. And he's having to do like 4 minutes and hit 74 planned effects. Quite honestly, it's very, very similar. And it's pretty funny. When I watched him do all that, he says, I like to start with the ending in mind. So I'll write the closing credits. That's what I do first. I'll think of each theme for each character, and I'll write that. And then what I do is I backfill the rest of the score, and I'll take snippets from the closing credits and expand on those and hit all those cues and do that sort of a thing. And he says, by the time you get to the to the ending credits, you've never heard that piece of music, but you already know it. And that was such a brilliant, just mind-blowing thing. It's like, that's exactly what I like to do with marching band shows. I need to know that big picture. And so that kind of ties all that back together. But it was just one of those things where it really, it was very inspiring, needless to say. And just watching his process just made me feel comfortable about doing mine. Just a little side note is watching Raiders of the Lost Ark. I think not, it was the third one. It was Temple of Doom, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll
Drawing a blank.
Check that one. We'll fact check on
please do. Yeah. Anyway, just watching the first 4 minutes without any music was just, I never felt so empty watching something before.
Right.
I mean, we all, and as musicians, we know this, but to actually experience, because it's one thing to turn your volume down on the screen and just watch, but when they have dialogue and you're hearing the sound effects but no music, that's a completely different thing. And then when he played it with the music that he had composed during that first 4 minutes, I had a completely new respect for his process and just his genius at doing that. So I thought that was really very cool on doing that. I'm trying to remember how I was tying it back to my everyday sort of a thing.
Right. Well, we were talking
But
about just the balancing the work and the process
right.
of doing this
Oh yeah.
consistently all year round, kind of in the freelance
Yes.
mode.
Yes, yeah, thank you. That helped me get back. So what he said, I mean, think about how much music that he writes. Now it's kind of nice when you have $1 million price tag on a project or whatever,
Yeah.
but his thing is that he writes 1.5 minutes of music every single day, and that's the amount of time that he will put in. I'm sure he goes over at times a little bit, but that's his thing. Is if I do 1.5 minutes of music every day, I will be able to maintain and hit these deadlines and do all this kind of stuff. And I just thought that was great. I my business coach also told me, the most important thing, and we all know this anyway, the most important thing you can do is to start the project.